I want to welcome you all to Dr. Monroe's session, and it's called Understanding the Immigrant Student and Interactive Learning Opportunity on the topic of current U.S. immigration statistics. We're excited that you've joined us today. The chat window will be open, so feel free to ask questions and participate. And without further ado, please welcome Dr. Monroe. Thank you.
I was chatting. All right, I got to send one off. I will not be doing that during the session. Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Natosha Monroe and I'm really excited to be presenting this on this topic to you all. Okay, so the whole point of this is to be super interactive. So please feel free to chat amongst yourselves and comment on whatever we're discussing in the chat box. Please feel free to do that. I don't want to spend too much time on me. Here's a little bit about me, which is one thing I want to point out in why I'm presenting this topic and in the way that I'm going to be presenting it. I hope to be slightly outside the box. It's outside the box of what I'm used to. I'm new to Ashford, so I might be totally going over something that you all are very familiar with. And if so, great, but I don't know. I think there's a good place for it. I'm going to start my timer. So basically, my background in psychology is specifically towards positive psychology and studying and looking at what is good and what is going well and what is emotionally healthy about different phenomena, and to learn about it and to implement change and to implement positive reactions. So I hear a lot of negative things in our media and amongst people, water cooler talk, as far as immigration and the issues that immigrants bring. And that's not the case. It's just not statistically the case. So I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle. So that's a little bit of background about me. I have worked very briefly. I had the honor to work with the founder of positive psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman, and other researchers and instructors at the UPenn program, specifically about resilience. So when I did my doctoral dissertation, and y'all might have caught the discovery session on that, I did a recorded on a similar topic, so it's immigrant students, but I did a positive psychology approach on that. So a couple of these slides will be the same because I wanted to reiterate this, but this is the interactive one. So if you watched that session, awesome. If not, I encourage you to go back. But I featured some of the statistics and some of the findings that I had in my dissertation study for my doctoral program with Peruvian immigrants. So that's when I really started to kind of look at the topic of immigration as different and noticed that a lot of positivity is going underreported, and we can do a lot with that positivity on this topic. So here we go. Y'all ready? I'm diving right in. So I'm going to ask you these questions, and these are not the poll questions, but I'm going to ask you a couple questions in our scenarios. And one thing that we're just wanting to do is build our schema of what immigrant is, and specifically from the educational standpoint of what our immigrant student needs might be and how we might meet those needs, and also how we should, see my word, better implement our students who are originally from other countries, all right? So I'm going to ask a couple questions, and here are some things I want you to keep in mind as I ask these upcoming questions. So I'm going to ask 2 questions, and when I ask them, you might even have, if you have any scratch paper, like if you have a paper and pen nearby, you might want to jot down your answers. But as I ask the questions, I want you to think of and take notice of, so this is a mindfulness exercise, what comes to your mind immediately when I ask the question? And you'll see it on the screen as well for you visual learners. I'm a visual learner. So when you see the question or hear it, what comes to mind immediately? And so it might be singular words might pop into your brain. It might be images that pop into your brain. You might have an emotional response to the question. So jot down your reactions and be mindful of them. And then also I want you to pay attention to what comes to mind as you continue to think about the question. This is very interesting. So I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and my background is more from the cognitive sense. And a lot can be told about what is previously stored in our mind or in our brain on a topic, and then also our work to broaden that topic and to gain more understanding and a more complete and accurate schema of whatever that is. So here comes the question. You ready? So pay attention to what comes to mind immediately, And then also what comes to mind after that. For instance, as you sit and think about the question, it might change. What popped into your brain immediately might alter a little bit. So spend a little bit more time on that second question. All right, here we go. Question 1. What comes to mind when you hear or see this? Immigrant. So just sit and think about that a minute. And then, so in the chat box, and you can jot down too, but share if you don't mind, what immediately came to mind and or what came to mind as you sat and thought about it. So if you would, chat, just type something real quick in the chat box about what came to your mind when you saw that word. Somebody says family, great. Okay, and then continue to think about it. What might this mean for you as an educator? Okay, says a lot of people heard immigrant, they thought family. Yes, someone else said needing to help. There are needs that immigrants might have, mistreatment, yeah. Migrant, bias from others, challenges, yes, 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 good stuff. So these are just all these concepts that are coming to mind. So your schema for immigrant, we all have a schema for everything that we are aware of. Interesting, right? We're going to build upon that schema today. Someone needing support, may not speak the language, may need help. Great, great thoughts. All right, on to our next question. Y'all are interactive, I love it. What is a college educational experience like for an immigrant? So you can jot down your responses. What comes to mind immediately? And then what comes to mind when you think about it a little bit more? May not speak the language, daunting, difficult, challenging. Yeah. Great. Okay. And then we're going to get to this in a minute. So basically, when we have a schema for something in our brain, it's basically built upon what your brain has experienced, whether it be personal experience. Media is huge in our culture right now in the US, right? Media paints a certain picture of just about anything. Path to succeeding in the US, love it, Patricia, right? So this is really interesting as far as self-awareness and how we think and how we will make decisions and perceive things is what comes to mind immediately. Because I'll be very honest, and I hope you all can as well. What immediately comes to mind isn't always accurate, right? And the more mindful we are and the more educated and experienced we are in different areas, we're able to know that. We're able to notice it. And then we can consciously draw upon information in our brain that makes it more accurate. But your brain is going to immediately, subconsciously give you what is most pertinent to you based upon the information that's known on this topic. But it's from the angle of survival, competition, all the basic kind of primitive stuff. Negativity bias is big. Okay, so yes, exactly. That's kind of where I'm going, Patricia. Patricia says we all have innate stereotypes or biases, whether we want to have them or not. Yeah, because that's how our brain's designed. That's how, you know, whether you believe in creation, evolution, or a mix of the two or whatever, point is we've all gotten to this point somehow and our brain works a certain way. So knowledge of that is power. All right, so here we go. So here's our poll questions, and I'm not going to answer them right away. Y'all are going to get annoyed with me. We're going to answer them later. So this is the poll question. Dun, 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 dun. I have no idea how to work a poll in this system. Awesome.
Are you ready for me to do you want me to put the poll up now?
Yes, we're ready. I'm like, that's not my question, but that's a cool question.
Just a moment while I get it going. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll go ahead and put the 2 poll questions out. No Googling.
Okay.
All right. So poll question 1. Which country's official language is English? Mark all that apply, because yes, I'm tricky, and there might be more than one, or there might not.
So it looks like our poll didn't save. So if everybody could just.
No worries.
I don't know what to tell
It's okay. The only reason I wanted to do a poll is I didn't want anyone to be embarrassed if they didn't have the correct answer. I didn't want to put anybody on blast. And then poll question 2, which country's official language is English? Mark all that apply. Okay, we'll come back to these later. If you can somehow enter it, that would be awesome. We'll come back to it. All right, no Googling though, guys, okay? Deal? All right, so back to question 1. What comes to mind when you first hear immigrant? I didn't hear anybody saying any of this type of stuff, and that was kind of my point. Sometimes people do, and a couple of you did kind of teeter on the topic of it. So who are these people in the pictures? All of them are very influential people in the United States in different ways, very different ways. I tried to pick a mix, but every one of them was an immigrant from another country. Okay, you might identify any of these cats? I bet you do. No worries. Okay, so let me get my little, oh, I don't know if I can do it on this one. I guess I can't. No, well, my little pointer thing, my pencil, no biggie. So on the top left, anybody know who that is? Liz Claiborne. Actually, her full name I had to write down because I didn't know. Anne Elizabeth Jane Claiborne. She was from Belgium, and she was one of the initial most influential women. I think she was the first woman in the U.S. who was the CEO of a company who made the Forbes list. So Fortune 500 list. Anyway, very influential. If y'all have heard of her, an immigrant. In the middle, I think everybody knows this guy, right? Albert Einstein from Germany. The top right is Oscar de la Renta. He was born in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Wonderful place if you haven't been there. And also, arguably, the first mental health institution in the New World. But anyway, that's a nerdy side topic. The two guys in the bottom right are 2 of the 3 founders of YouTube. You might not have heard of these guys' names, but I'm sure you've heard of YouTube. On the right, you have Steve Chen. He's from Taiwan. And then on the left, you have Jawed Karim, and he is German. So he's from Germany. Immigrants, right? Were these people, oh, duh. Bottom left, Madeleine Albright, originally from what is now called the Czech Republic, used to be Czechoslovakia. Again, that's a great place to go to if you haven't been. All of them are, okay, I like to travel. I love culture. So, but these are the types of people who came to the US. As someone mentioned, immigrants often come for different opportunities and to make a better life for themselves in the US. But I don't think we always picture these types of people, right, when we think of immigrant, at least initially. Am I right? Yes, no? Yeah. But these were immigrants. And what if they were students in your class? Think about that. We never know. I get goosebumps when I say this, like I just got them. We never know who's sitting on the other side of the internet line, what would you call it? But who's on the other side of the computer screen around the world or around the United States, wherever. We don't know who we're teaching, who they're going to be, who they are now, right? Imagine if you were any of the teachers of these people. Do you think they knew that they were going to do these great things and influential things later in life? No, they were a student to them. Maybe they saw something special in them. Maybe they were able to empower them with some knowledge or some confidence that really helped them to make these big moves. But like, look at Steve Chen and Jawed. I mean, they had another partner as well. They went to school together. I think 2 of them went to school together. I think these 2 guys went to school together and another guy went to a different school. Can't remember how they knew each other, but at some point they ended up in a garage in California coming up with the idea for YouTube. So we never know who we're teaching in our classes. And we also, and here's my positive psychology angle, do not make the mistake of suggesting to an immigrant that they are not capable, because you don't know who you're talking to, right? Anyway, or any student. But again, we're focusing on immigrants. And then question 2, in thinking of the college educational experiences of immigrant students, did you immediately and or later picture this, right? Yes. So one person's pointing out in the chat that their grandparents are immigrants, and there's so much media coverage of migrants, and there's a tendency to confuse the two. So there are some differences. I don't want to go off too much of the path just due to timing, but so immigrant can also be a migrant. It depends. So people are in the US for different reasons. And I know most lately the politicized version of immigration and or migration is refugee status, right? So when we're talking immigrant, as far as who would be in school, they will have to be a student, they will have had to at least obtain some kind of educational status. Sometimes they're on a student visa, sometimes they're a legal citizen, sometimes not, and there's a lot of different processes and sometimes a lot of time in between all of those. So I don't want to get too much into the legalities of things, but you're right. People are here for different reasons. Some are legal, some are illegal. There's all kinds of definitions in between. And even that being said, and I got into this in my research. In my research, I only studied Peruvians in the US. But I had everything from totally undocumented to full citizen and who had been a citizen for a while and was working in a governmental sense. So I got a well-rounded view. I'm going to share a little bit of that with you here in a minute of the Peruvian immigrants as an example. But even that being said, yes, why someone's here, the conditions and legal aspects of why they're here could influence what they need and what support they need from you as an instructor. And again, that's not my focus of the presentation. I think we're all more familiar with that end of things, right? Because that's what we usually cover. My angle too is going to be, yes, of course, we meet the needs of our students and we become aware of them. And if we think that they need additional support, we have our contacts, right, at the school for support. That being said, don't assume. And when your students come into the class and they expose, hey, I'm from such and such country, how do you react and what do you do with it? And that's what we're going to get into. I'm going to do a real quick demonstration about schema because I'm a brain nerd and we touched on it. So we all kind of came up with what is our current schema for immigrant student? And this is applicable to any topic, right? This is our topic today. So quick question. Let me know in the chat box. Has anyone ever heard of the creature called the Watson? It's pronounced Watson, but it's spelled like this after the person who discovered this creature. Has anybody heard of it? Please tell me if you have. And if you have, do not say anything about it. Okay, good. I choose this animal because most people have not heard of it. Okay, so no one's heard of the animal. That's perfect. Okay, here we go. So I do this at some point with a lot of my students, and I use this a lot in my presentations to kind of explain the concept of schema and how our brain stores information and pulls up information. All right, real quickly. So there's gonna be, I'm gonna put a description of the Watson up on the next screen. So if you know that you're more of a visual person and you don't wanna listen to me read it, mute me, I won't be offended. Or if you know that you get a vision better from listening, then close your eyes and listen, all right? So all I want you to do is, as I'm reading this aloud or as you're reading it, picture in your mind what you're seeing or what you're hearing, okay? The Watson. Now everyone has said they don't know what this guy is, right? Okay. So the Watson, although he may not look like it, the Watson is a somewhat shy creature who lives in the Amazon basin's rainforest swamps. This environment is perfect for him because he is not the fastest, most nimble of his species. He's actually so slow moving that sometimes, that a lot of the time he can be seen in the treetops resting his chest on the branches of the trees. Here in the rainforest, he is able to navigate clumsily among the vines and trees, and he's rarely, if ever, seen on the ground. This makes sense too because his diet consists of mostly leaves. Watsons prefer to live near standing swamp water, perhaps because when they're young, they have been known to briefly go into the water to avoid their natural predators. Then they will use their sharp claws to pull themselves up and climb the swamp's vines and branches. People who have come across the Watson were likely met with a piercing stare from his blood-red eyes and also his stench. Yes, the Watsons are notorious for their stench. Maybe this is why they typically live in social groups consisting of just of family members. All right. So in the chat box, no Googling allowed. In the chat box, let me know what kind of creature did you picture? What did you picture in your mind? And I always get different answers. So there's no correct answers because we all admitted we didn't know what this animal was, right? So from each of you, I'd like to see what did you, okay. Number one answer, Sabine, that's what I typically hear is sloth. That's the #1 most common answer I've heard over the years. Skunk type or ape type thing. Yeah. Go ahead. Everybody let me know. What'd you picture? What'd you picture? And as you're typing in, so what goes on is your brain pulls up information from what it knows, right? Something like a skunk. I also hear lizard, koala, okay, because of the claws. So what your brain does is it gathers information from what it knows. So most of you could picture an Amazon rainforest swamp, right? You could picture the vines and branches. You could picture the claws, lizard type creature. Okay, y'all hit all the highlights of everything that I usually hear. Monkey, someone said ape thing. Okay, so how interesting. I love this stuff, y'all. I could do a whole presentation on this, but I won't. Almost everybody came up with something slightly different, and we all read the same description, and we all admitted we didn't know what it was. So here he is. You ready? Are you ready? Are you sure? What? Here's the Watson. Nobody said this. Now, did I trick you? Yes, of course. I left out feather. I left out wings. I left out beak because most people have schema for that. You would figure out what it was. So I avoided those words on purpose. How does anybody feel? Do you feel tricked? Do you feel shocked? But here's my point in this. We don't know what we don't know, but guess what? Every time, you guys, your brain will fill in the blank spots. Why didn't we all picture this swamp scene or these trees with no animal? Why didn't we just picture a white blob? Because that would be honest, right? That would be truthful. We don't know what this is. I should picture a white blob. Your brain's not going to do that. Your brain is arrogant. Your brain is not going to admit that it doesn't know anything, and it fills in with what it does know. This is what is extremely, extremely dangerous right now about our very media-driven culture. Have you ever had a political discussion with someone who didn't actually know the issues but was very passionate and felt they did? This is why. Ever met somebody with stereotypes and had a hard time convincing them otherwise, even when you gave them the evidence? This is why, okay? So our brain's geared for survival and competition and all of that, but we can mindfully admit that we don't know the answer and build upon that and create an accurate schema. So that's what we're doing today. So good, we're good on time. So here's a student scenario, okay? We're building that schema. In your initial introduction discussion forum, we love those, one of your students mentions she just moved to the United States and is originally from Freetown, Sierra Leone. She did not meet the minimum length requirement for the post. Only one of the 3 prompt topics were discussed. And you noticed significant errors in her post to include several misspellings, 2 grammar errors, and paragraph structure issues. Okay, so you can do this in your head, and I would love it if you'd share your answers. How do you respond to this student? And by that, how do you literally respond in the forum? That's kind of a teaching preference thing, right? How do you respond in her feedback? How do you respond to that? And what do you think initially about that? Okay, so how do y'all react? And then this brings up our topic and this conversation point. Where or what is the line between cultural awareness, incompetence, and stereotyping? And then there's also the word bias. So that could be a whole presentation, but it's just something to think about. And y'all tell me any thoughts that you have on either the scenario with the student from Sierra Leone or this conversation point. There is a fine line. My Ph.D. was in international psychology, focusing on trauma services, and I've worked numerous countries, humanitarian aid, and there is a fine line between this. You need to be culturally aware, right? And competent and knowledgeable to know what kind of conversation to have with the student, and that's the part we can work on. But stereotyping and bias typically tends to come from too narrow of a scope of knowledge and experience. Now, has every one of us been to every country in the world? I wish. No. So it's not fair to think that we're going to be 100% culturally aware and competent of any student originally from another country who comes into our class, right? Impossible. That being said, once it comes to your attention that your student is from another country, there's a couple things you can do to increase your awareness of the country, such as, yes, you can Google. Now there's some danger in Google, but you can at least get an idea of any recent, and if you get an idea for their age, that can also give you a little bit of an idea of what they might have experienced or not. Now, it's not necessarily your place. If you had a student who you knew was in Peru in the late 90s or early 2000s, you wouldn't come out and say, hey, how is that socio-political conflict with a shining path, the Sendero Luminoso? You wouldn't do that. No, you wouldn't. But it just gives you a little bit of awareness. And if you saw certain things come out with this student, you might have more of an educated stance to come from to give support to the student when it comes to your attention that they need support. And this goes the same, you know, for any of our students who need any kind of support. You don't want to ever suggest that they're weak or not capable or whatever, right? We need to come from a place of empowerment. But when things come to your attention that they might need help, then knowledge is power, and you know where to go with that in a more appropriate manner. So somebody mentioned as far as feedback for the student or how would they react. Yes, thank you. Refer them to sources such as the Writing Center, tutors, because remember what you're seeing in the student's work because you don't know anything else about the student, right? It's introduction post, but you know their writing is not their forte. Their written expression is not their forte, and you know that they're from Sierra Leone. So first of all, somebody mentioned, I love it, I tracked y'all. Somebody mentioned English as a second language. The students from Sierra Leone, what's their official language? It's English. Tricked you. Thank you. So knowing, is English the primary spoken language of that country is important, because how embarrassed would you feel if, and it limits your scope of how to help the student. If you're thinking, oh, they don't know English and that's why their grammar's bad, and that's what, but that's the language they've been speaking their whole life. Same with our students who are from the US. How do you know that English is their first language? Aha, y'all are on to me. Okay, so I gotta move forward. Timing. So here's just a little bit of background as far as why I did some research in immigration. But some US immigrants experience higher rates of poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, depression, non-graduate status, crime, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Is this true? Yes, this exists. Some immigrants, just like, guess what? Some non-immigrants, right? There is a need for additional research and knowledge and perspectives and or cognitive appraisals of immigration experiences. That's why I did my research, provided by and based upon the descriptions of the immigrants themselves rather than outsiders. That's why I did my research the way that I did. I'm sharing with you a positive psychology. Guess what? You had a Peruvian in your class. More than likely, they're gonna be more successful than your non-immigrant student. So here's some, as up to date as you can get, you know, statistics always lag. These are some of the best statistics I found on Peruvian immigrants in the US. Poverty, less than the general US population of non-immigrants is what that means. And it's also much less than Hispanic overall in the US, okay? The Peruvians in my study were extremely frustrated. Every single one of them mentioned it on their own, not prompted. They were frustrated by being lumped into poverty, illiterate, unemployed, when actually they are more literate and more employed than our US population that is not an immigrant. Look at the education of bachelor's degree or higher. Again, more Peruvian immigrants than non-immigrants, and a lot more than Hispanic overall. So watch your stereotypes, watch your bias, watch your initial reaction. Initial reactions are often inaccurate. Then seek out the answer. In 2013, approximately 41.3 immigrants lived in the United States, an all-time high for a nation historically built on immigration. The United States holds approximately 20% of the world's international migrants. Remember, we got into that, having less than 5% of the overall population of the world. And you guys, look at these stats. That's 2015. That's not 2016, 2017. So it's all higher now. So we need to be aware of the differences among immigrants so that we don't limit ourselves and our students. Immigrants make up 13% of the total population of the United States, blah, blah, blah. Y'all got it? Okay. Here's some more stats. Okay. Also, check this one out. In 2014, 70% of South American immigrants ages 16 and over were in the civilian labor force, compared to 66% and 62% of the foreign and US born, respectively. So here's some websites. DHS.gov, Department of Homeland Security, that has immigration data. Which countries speak English? You can look up, that's debatable and it's always changing. Guess what? Back to my poll questions. Refugee Information, United Nations High Commission of Refugees is a good source to go to for refugee students, beyond refugee students. So English as official language. Think about that student from Freetown, Sierra Leone. How do you respond now? Would you respond in the same way? Or would you maybe go at least Google or look up Sierra Leone to see, is English their major language there? What's been going on in Sierra Leone? Why might she be here, right? And I had it on here, but so the countries, I'm gonna pause and then I'm done. I know my time is running out. Thought I had this on.
We're like right at time. So if you have like a 30
Perfect.
seconds.
Perfect. So of all these, English is the official language. In the first section, the only one that English is not the official language is Egypt. And now the second question, guess what? Afghanistan, not the official language, English. Neither is it in the United States. Boom. So in the United States, English is not actually our official language. Congress is always proposing bills. There's one on the House, in front of the House right now to adopt English as official language, but it's not. So that's about it. And so my challenge is just, to you, what are you going to do when you have an immigrant student? And what are you going to be aware of? And how are you going to implement that student's unique perspective and what they can bring to you? We're trying to teach globalization. They can bring so much perspective and international concept that is different and unique to your classroom. So I encourage you to bring them in.